Very good evening, viewers. You're watching the Urban Debate. I am Afrida Rahman Ali. In 24 hours in our country, India has witnessed 3 brutal murders of police officers who were merely killed because they were enforcing the rule of law. In Ranchi, a lady sub-inspector was mowed down during a routine vehicle check. Sandhya Topnaw killed by cattle smugglers. The sub-inspector was chasing a vehicle carrying animals illegally. The accused ran the vehicle in the opposite direction and crushed the officer to death on the spot. In Gujarat's Anand, a truck driver ran over a cop after he stopped his vehicle at night. Constable was on night patrol in Borsad and attempted to stop this truck, which had a Rajasthan license plate. So he was intercepted for an illegal license plate. There again, the truck driver fled the scene. Post-murder, these 2 deaths come just a day after the murder of a DSP from Haryana who challenged the mining mafia in the state. Tauro DSP Surendra Singh was killed. In fact, DSP was probing illicit mining and he was also run over by a truck, allegedly by the sand mafia. 3 cases, viewers, where cops have been killed either by the mafia or criminals. And this gives out a picture of how lawlessness has taken over in these states. In all 3 cases, there are a few things in common. First, all of them were on the line of duty. In fact, these are odd hours that they were out there doing their duty, enforcing the law, and they had to face the wrath of these criminals. They were all mowed down by trucks, by overspeeding vehicles. And all of these cases show lawlessness in a way where police itself is not safe. The police itself is not able to do their duty or stop criminals without facing dire consequences. It hits at the rise in smuggling cases. These incidents, of course, draw attention also to how honest cops are made to pay for the diligence and sincerity on duty. It raises questions also to, do these criminals have any fear of the law? Have the criminals now got this kind of an upper hand where they are simply not afraid and anyone who comes in their way will have to be eliminated? Is that how the system works when it comes to these large networks of organized crime? Did the system fail these honest officers? Let's begin our conversation with our expert panel. Joining us this evening, Satyen Kulabkar, BJP spokesperson; Charans Sapra, spokesperson of the Congress Party; Dr. Tanuj Khatri, spokesperson of JMM; Yashovardhan Azad, former IPS officer; Nirmal Kaur, former DGP Jharkhand. Very good evening. Thank you so much for joining us. I want to begin by asking Mr. Kulabkar, cops falling prey to criminals. That is the running narrative in all of these 3 cases. And the message that goes across to the common man, to the layman, to the viewers who are watching us is probably that there couldn't have been a greater indictment of failure of law and order, isn't it? Where criminals are targeting cops with impunity, where police itself is not safe. Would you concede, Mr. Kulabkar, that this is the lowest point of lawlessness that Haryana has reached?
My first reaction to this is I would like to give condolences to Surendra Singh ji, Imran Singh ji and Raj, who is an officer from Gujarat Police. This act is an act of treachery and we surely condemn this on this national platform. We definitely agree to that if the law and order has to be in place in certain cases, and the investigation has to be done to the minutest level. The reason for this is that the government or any of the system, because this type of killing of the police on duty, or for that instance, any person on duty, is an act of terrorism for us. And we will surely probe into the matter. The government of any type. Let's not get into a political discussion over here. Here the question is of law and order. Here the question is of line of duty officers. And knowing this as a sensitive point, the investigation should go on in a very meticulous way. And any accused, he may be of a political party, he may be of some, mafia gangs or any of them, they should be caught to the task. This is what we feel.
Mining mafia is getting quite out of hand, as is pretty evident. Now, when something is rampant, then you have this kind of a case and it becomes an eye-opener. But this has also exposed the larger malaise, isn't it? You are agreeing to the point that law and order is deteriorating, and we've got reports that MLAs are being threatened, police is not safe. What is the public supposed to feel? And it is not as if, you get this impression that the government is acting expeditiously, is what Congress leaders are alleging. Let me in fact bring in Mr. Charans Sapra. Mr. Sapra, there are very strong reactions from Mr. Huda on this incident. What is your take on what has happened in Haryana?
First of all, I would like to convey my condolences for all the three officers, who have been killed, unfortunately. I would not get into the slugfest, but I would like to say that there have been the entire country whereby we have, they have some certain political also, or they are handled with some sort of. So in such a situation, there is no confidence that there is somebody, and that's why probably such situation is coming, that they dare to ramp a vehicle into a police vehicle, or just kill brutally, like the Haryana officer was killed. In fact, I feel each and every state government, including the Haryana or Jharkhand or the Gujarat government, though two states are having BJP government, but I don't want to get into that slugfest. But everybody should update their entire system. The fear of police, fear of administration should be there among the masses, and especially in the goons.
Okay, we are not trying to make this political at all. We just want to hear from people who have some idea of governance as to where is the failure of governance here, because the police force this has happened in multiple states. The police force coming under attack in this manner, extremely tragic to see young, brave officers who were out there, in an ungodly hour. Take the instance of what happened in Ranchi, and I would address this question to Dr. Khatri and Nirmal Kaur. Look at what happened there. A lady cop, a woman sub-inspector, crushed to death in Ranchi when she tried to stop cattle smugglers during a vehicle check late last night. Sandhya Topno was her name. She was posted in charge of Tupudana outpost, and police said that they had information that there is a pickup truck carrying cattle that had started from Odisha and would be passing through Ranchi. This brave officer got there on the spot, intercepted the vehicle. The vehicle managed to dodge the patrol teams at two places before they reached Jharkhand. So before this, there are two places that the vehicle managed to escape the checkpoints. But when they reached Miss Topna, who would not deter in her job, she signaled the vehicle to stop. The pickup truck instead ran over her and fled the spot. The other police personnel on duty went after the truck. The hot pursuit, of course, ended with an accident in which the truck overturned, but the officer could not be saved. It's a heart-rending story. Dr. Khatri, इस पे आपका क्या कहना है कि पुलिस ऑफिसर जो इतने ब्रेव पुलिस ऑफिसर्स हैं जो अपना काम कर रहे हैं, उनको ही कुचला जा रहा है झारखंड में?
देखिए, सबसे पहले तो मैं गुजरात, हरियाणा और झारखंड के उन सभी जाबाज पुलिस ऑफिसर जो दिवंगत पुलिस ऑफिसर हैं, उन्हें सच्ची श्रद्धांजलि देना चाहता हूं। और मिरर नाउ के माध्यम से आपको भी मैं, आपके चैनल को भी धन्यवाद देना चाहता हूं कि आज इस घड़ी में जब हम हैं, जब इस ऐसी घटनाओं से कोई भी राज्य अछूता नहीं रह रहा है, चाहे वो पक्ष का हो या विपक्ष का हो, किसी भी राजनीतिक सत्ता का शासन वहां हो, तो आपने एक ऐसा डिबेट का आयोजन किया जो कि पूर्णतः मैं समझता हूं कि नॉन पॉलिटिकल ही रहेगा। अब आता हूं मैं आपके सवाल पर। निश्चित रूप से आज झारखंड में भी एक दुखद घटना घटी। हमने झारखंड की एक महिला पुलिस ऑफिसर संध्या टोपनो जी को हमने आज खो दिया, और पुलिस ने त्वरित कार्रवाई करते हुए, रांची की पुलिस ने, झारखंड की पुलिस ने त्वरित कार्रवाई करते हुए उस चालक को भी गिरफ्तार करने का काम किया है जिसने इस घटना को अंजाम दिया। लेकिन बात यह है, चूंकि ये पूरी तरह से हम लोग आज जो चर्चा में है वो पूरी तरह से नॉन पॉलिटिकल हो, ये मैं भी चाहूंगा, और मुझे लगता है कि मेरी बातों से बाकी पैनलिस्ट भी इत्तेफाक रखेंगे। इस तरह की घटनाएं आखिर क्यों हो रही है, इसके तह तक हमें जाने की जरूरत है। आखिर क्यों जो है ऐसे अपराधियों का मंसूबा जो है वो बढ़ चुका है, इसको भी देखने की जरूरत है, इसको भी समझने की जरूरत है। निश्चित रूप से ये इस घटना की जितनी भर्त्सना की जाए वो कम है। और ये सिर्फ झारखंड में नहीं, गुजरात में भी ऐसी तस्वीरें सामने आई, हरियाणा में भी ये चीजें सामने आई। तो कहीं ना कहीं आज जो है एक जो पुलिसिंग की बात होती है, जिन पर दारोमदार होता है सुरक्षा का, जब वो सुरक्षित नहीं रहेंगे तो आज कुछ कठोर कदम और कुछ कठोर कानून बनाने की भी आवश्यकता है, जहां तक हम समझते हैं।
Mr. Azad, do you feel that, this kind of a thing is again becoming so common where cops are attacked, but here the audacity of the crime, the brazenness with which these officers are run over, it seems that they are not used to having anyone, these criminals are not used to having anyone stop them in their ranks. And the moment a brave officer comes their way, the only thing they know is to run them over. Is that the impression that you get, Mr. Azad?
First, let me tell you at the very outset that the mining mafia or the mafias who are involved in whether stone mining or sand mining are entrenched very, very deep. And it's way back across the decades that we are having to see this phenomena. Mind you, in 2012, in the Chambal area, an IPS officer was killed in 2012 when he was trying to catch the mafia over there, the stone mafia and the stand mafia. In 2018 in Morena, at the same place, there was a deputy ranger who was killed. So what I'm trying to say is that across the regimes, the mafia has ruled supreme. What is the reason? The reason is that there is no political will to attack the mafia. Otherwise, the mafia can be smashed in a matter of weeks. Now, in this particular case, I would say the three cases are different. In Anand, Gujarat, what has happened is that I think it was a lack of professionalism and lack of the protocols put forward, because a single constable trying to flag down a truck at night is a little complicated unless you do it with a backup, unless you do it with a barricade, and unless you do it with a cutoff at points where if you miss there, you can catch there. Now, in the case of Jharkhand, as of course Ms. Nirmal Kaur will elaborate on it, it's so unfortunate because the information was there and yet it happened. In the case of the other place in Haryana, Aravalli is a very, very eco-fragile range. And even now the National Green Tribunal has set up a committee to find out why illegal mining is going on after SC has banned mining over there. So what I'm trying to say is, when this is so entrenched deep, and another thing, let me tell you, Afrida, that three departments, mining, excise, and transport, are very, very critical. And you know why? Because these provide the real muscle, real, to the coffers. And that's why, when this happens, unless the policemen stand up, there's a mining secretary, there are, so many police officers. What happens is these brave police officers lose their lives because of the intent is lacking from the top. Yes, some could be that some of the officers are complicit, some of the officers are scared, and the other is the fear of transfer all the time, because powers that be are closely in nexus with this mining mafia.
These are very important points, Mr. Azad, that you're making, and this is precisely the idea of this conversation, that we need to call it out. We need to call it out as many times as it's required. And I'm going to repeat your words where you said that across regimes, you have allowed the mafia to reign supreme. So it is an outcome, it is a fallout of that. These are not instances that have happened one-off. These are systemic failures that have been allowed to happen. They have existed for long decades, as Mr. Azad put it. And now when you see a crime of this nature happen, it is almost as if this was waiting to happen. There was one brave officer standing up there doing his job, and the moment he does that, he's going to be crushed. But we cannot simply remain mute. And, we cannot turn a blind eye to all of this, Mr. Azad. I'm so glad you put it out and called a spade, where you also said that in certain cases, officers are scared. In certain cases, they are complicit. In certain other cases, They simply do not have the wherewithal, like you pointed out in what happened in Gujarat. And I take your point, and I'm going to, in fact, dwell on this in just a little bit, on where it's simply not planned enough. This entire operation of intercepting a menacing criminal, you need certain wherewithal for it. I'll come back to Mr. Azad for that, but let me have Mr. Nirmal Kaur also come into the conversation. Yes, Ms. Kaur, on what happened in Jharkhand. Who do you hold responsible for something like this? Is it also true that in the state of Jharkhand, these kind of mafias have existed and they manage to operate and kill people at will?
Mafias are everywhere. I think singling out Jharkhand would be very unfair to Jharkhand, because sand and mining mafia is in a much larger scale in many states in South and North, not only in Jharkhand. Then again, even cattle smuggling is much more in many other states, or whatever mafia. I mean, name you it.
Yes.
This audacious, these criminals, who have done it, they think they have powerful backing, or the law is so weak that it will not be able to catch up with them. They have scant respect shown. I mean, it's been proven that they have scant respect for the law. And, law is losing its face. Hazur Bahadur ke Iqbal se to sab kuch chalta hai. And if police loses its face, then there's nothing left there. And also, I'll take this opportunity to say that this kind of open defiance of the law, where, police is the most visible part of law. What is law? Policeman in uniform is law. He is the most visible part of, your legal system on the everywhere, anywhere in the society. And if you attack law openly like that, that means it's an open defiance of law, and it could, this kind of attitude could result in breakdown of law and order. And to a degree, it has happened in these three cases. But I'll take this platform and opportunity to suggest a few things.
Okay.
For the cops, for the policemen who are affected like this. It's unfortunate all this has happened, and I join all the panelists in paying my condolences and, recording my very sad feelings today. But the thing is, we have to have, 2-3 things. One is mechanical barriers. We should have mechanical barriers on the road where the police officers don't need to come in front of the vehicle, stop. We should have some system of mechanical barriers. And, even when there has to be, like, information was there. In Ranchi, what happened is there is information that this particular vehicle is coming and it is supposed to be smuggling, or it is suspected to be smuggling. It needs to be checked that information has gone down the system and reached the officer in charge of the local outpost. And she is very much there, totally alert on her duty. But somehow they crushed her and they ran her over and went off, mowed her down. They've been arrested. Another thing which we should do is, now when these cases come to courts, we have to make it a very, very deterrent punishment. There are many aspects of punishment. The one, I would say, the most deterrent, most important aspect of punishment here would be the deterrence effect. So punishments meted out have to be so severe by the courts and everyone concerned that this... this deterrence, these crimes are not repeated in future ever. Yes. Azad told us that there have been these incidents in Chambal Valley and at many other places. So deterrence action has to be taken. And third part is somehow looking after the families when such incidents happen, which is a large, a corpus or a large insurance plan for every cop. The premium would be very low for anyone concerned if only such cases are covered, because these incidents are few and far between, but the families can be well looked after. So these are a few points I want to make.
But I have another take, and I want you also to comment on that, Ms. Kaur. Of course, I would want you to have a glass of water first. But, the other take that I have on this is that here is a brave woman, a woman officer, and you are a woman officer. In a case like this, in tier 2, tier 3 cities like Ranchi, these women become role models, isn't it? For girl-child education, for women power. And when you have an incident like this, it's a setback far greater, with far greater ramifications in a country where women are not allowed to take up these combative jobs. Mr. Azad, what has been your experience in that?
Ranchi is my capital. I belong to Jharkhand, and so I have a special affinity with Ranchi. It's a beautiful place.
Yes.
And mind you, Topno, she is the local person from Jharkhand area, and that's why it's a great tragedy to lose an officer like this. in a place like Jharkhand, when you have women officers coming up in various areas, it's a matter of great pride for the community. And that's why I think it's a great loss. Now, the first point, which I would say that the induction of technology is such a critical thing today, Afrida, I can't tell you, but the states are not spending enough on the security budget towards this. And second is, when you operationalize things like this, when you have an information and you have to lay a trap, there are things which you have to lay down, and especially in cases where you really have information. And that is why I will say that this is perhaps one of the most unfortunate episodes that we are looking at.
Mr. Kulabkar, what Mr. Azad said, and I wanted, in fact, to bring out this point, that the mafia network that doesn't allow anyone to come in its way, as we have seen, anyone who dares to stop them meets with these kind of consequences. It's almost like there is no law and order. But what is also interesting is that criminals have upgraded their technology. Now, to avoid detection, drug mafia apparently use the dark web of communication. And the cops are not, the police force is not upgraded enough. Yes. In both these states, in Gujarat and in Haryana, what exactly is the government going to do about it? That you have to now catch up with technology for better detection, and also, like Nirmal Kaur said, there has to be a better arrangement in place where an officer is deployed to intercept these kind of menacing criminals and mafia gangs.
I was listening to Kaur Madam and Azad ji both, and they made very valid points on certain cases that we have to have engineering, enforcement and education, all three things put together to detect this type of crimes. Let me assure you one thing from your forum, that Bharatiya Janata Party governments will have a zero tolerance for this type of criminals, and they will not be spared at all. Another point which Kaur Madam also pointed out is supporting this type of families through assistance. Let me tell you through this forum that 1 crore rupee is assigned for the Haryana officer, and even the Gujarat government is also thinking on the same lines to support the families, because the officer who was killed in Gujarat, his wife died 4 years back. He had two sons. They are both dependent on his fathers, and yesterday this unfortunate incident happened. Both the kids right now are in such a it's a very sorry state of affair for them. And look, we assure you one thing, that there will be a zero tolerance toward crime. There will be lot of understanding of this issue. There will be lot of probing. There will be lot of engineering and technology coming together to curtail this type of crimes happening. And we will definitely come on these mafias in a very, very different way.
So drug mafia, mining mafia, cattle smugglers, liquor mafia. Charans Sapra, your take on what is the best way forward? Because clearly what these three incidents have exposed is that in some cases the police force is ill-equipped to handle these kind of organized crimes. What would be your take on how we can at least not have officers on duty being crushed in this manner? What should be the lessons learned?
Number one, the political masters or the political setup should learn that lip service is not going to work now. Like we can say that zero tolerance for these mafia gangs, but still, for example, Haryana, even after the court's order, when the mining is banned, the mining was still going on, the illegal mining was going on, and hence the officer went for the raid and he got killed over there. So the political masters or the administration or the political parties who are running the administration need to be more serious. Number two, I would like to give you an example of today's case of Sidhu Moosewala's killers who were killed in Punjab, in Amritsar at the Atari border. That fight went on for around 5 hours. That means they had good equipments, guns with which they could, they could fight with the Punjab police over there. So the issue is that even when the Sidhu Moosewala was killed, he was killed with AK-47. Today also probably the same weapon was there. So from where they are getting the weapon, the story starts from there. How does this weapon, the sophisticated weapon, come into the hands of these gangsters? How are these gangsters getting this from where across the border or how it is coming. The borders are porous. This is a chain reaction. Everybody has to be alert in the system until and unless the system gets updated from the top. I feel these things might continue, and we should not tolerate, the political system or the administrative system should not tolerate this. We should go for the updation of everything.
The idea is not simply to catch that truck driver or the person behind the wheels. The idea is to catch the big fish. The idea is to crack down on these mafia networks, and that will require far greater muscle. That will require intent on the part of the police and on the part of the political class. Otherwise, you only treat the symptoms, you don't treat the disease. I think that is one of the points that have come out in the conversation so far. Nirmal Kaur, I hope you're feeling better. Just wanted you to weigh in on the point about how women officers who have taken these challenging roles, they are role models. And when something like this happens, what is the kind of message that could, it's very unfortunate that, you in a country where women are not usually encouraged to take these kind of professions, if one Sandhya Topno dies in this manner, what is the message you think that could go, and how can we prevent it?
That way, the society here is very supportive of women. Society is really, encouraging to women taking up policing jobs and such unusual fields, and they welcome them. And women are really welcome. And of course, it's very sad that this happened to Sandhya Topno, a lady officer. But then many officers die in the line of duty. And in that sense, you can say it's a normal event. Not normal, but I mean is that, okay, it's one of the dangers which a police officer faces. And it's very unfortunate, highly unfortunate. But it is in no way going to deter girls from coming up, joining police. And if anything, society is even more criticizing the perpetrator even more here. They even attack the woman who's out there in the small hours of the night trying to protect the community, the society. And they are attacking her, mowing her down, crushing her, killing her. This is, society, if anything, by and large, society is very, very supportive of women, and especially police officers, even in states like Bihar and Jharkhand. They are very, very encouraging to women. And this, in fact, will encourage many more girls to come up. This kind of martyrdom, or this kind of giving your life for the society, this is not going to discourage girls from coming up and joining the police or becoming police officers. Okay, it's a new field for women, but then they are coming out with flying colors. They are taking up the challenges, and by and large, they have proven themselves that they are very good. In fact, in many times we've seen where our women battalions or our women police officers, they are doing a very good job. And
right, hats off to Sandhya Top. Really, I would like to offer my condolences and my prayers to all the affected families. And before I close, I want to bring in Mr. Azad once again to, at least point out a couple of things with regards to how mafia is also in a way defrauding the state exchequer, isn't it, to the tune of thousands. It's taxpayers' money. It's a huge loss to the taxpayers' money. And like I mentioned, it's not just the sand mafia, the drug mafia, the liquor mafia, the cattle mafia. All of this put together has become a huge issue for the country at large. And we've already spoken about how the old methods don't work, and the cops on duty cannot be treated like cannon fodder. They should not become the sacrificial lambs. But I cannot help bring up the fact that there is a sense of dodging and denying. There's a denial. Even in this case, if you look at the statements coming from the Haryana government, they say there is no mafia. There are local people involved. And they, of course, also say that we've always tried to control the mining, and there are 110 cases registered. So I think a part of the problem, Mr. Azad, is not accepting, not acknowledging the issue for what it is.
In fact, I am of the firm view that the reign of the mafia, which has continued across decades, and Bihar is one of them. Bihar is a place where various kind of mafias have been ruling since the 80s. And in fact, mind you, one of the chief ministers was transferred, was kicked out only because he took the mafia head on, whether it's the coal mafia, whether it's the balu mafia, whether it's the pani mafia, the huge kind of drain of the resources of the exchequer. And if you look at the various states across, it is shocking how it is continuing. It cannot continue without some kind of hidden or oblique state support. And that is the problem which you have today in the various districts, that if a bold officer stands up, he's transferred. There is a young lady officer again. She's a sub-divisional officer, Shraddha Pandre, if I remember, in Madhya Pradesh. She was transferred within 3 months when she took on the mafia. And the mafia made attacks on her at least 11 times. So this is the story, actually, what is there. Now, the second point which you mentioned, which is really critical, and I was going to raise it, is whether the real people will be caught. Often, Afrida, you will see, again in the encounter which took place in Haryana, it was the cleaner of the truck who was caught. The question is, the people who are doing this with their muscle and money at the districts or at the state, they need to be caught. And that is why MS Nirmal Kaur was saying the right thing, that we should prosecute this thing to the end and see that the real mafia is reined in. And
Yes,
the real mafia will be reined in if the CM or the chief minister has the political will for it.
At least the chief ministers of these three states now must come up with a clear statement on what they plan to do with the mafia reigning supreme, with the kind of exposure that expose that these cases have done now, in a way of how the mafia has been operating with impunity. We cannot have more officers killed in this manner. Let's end the conversation with that. Thank you so much to all my panelists for joining us this evening.